Hey everybody, welcome back. I am Michael George with the George Home Team at LPT Realty. And I wanted to go ahead and give you the February 2026 market update. This data is from the Florida Association of Realtors as of the end of January 2026. So we're going to roll right into this. And as you well know, every time you get the question, how's the market doing? So that's what we're going to cover in this video. We're going to cover all of Volusia County. Then we're going to go city by city. We're going to separate the data between single family homes as well as condo and townhomes for the beachside communities. So let's get going. First of all, everyone likes to know what interest rates are doing. As you can see, we've come down tremendously from the high, but we're kind of stubbornly stuck here above 6%. Now, if that's getting in the fives, 5.5s, I do believe the market's going to explode. There's a lot of pent-up buyer demand there. But for right now, we got 30-year fixed mortgage rates just above 6%, 6.1, 6.09. Those fluctuate daily. As the time of this recording, we're right at about 6%, 6.1. Now, I also want to explain the difference between median and average sales price. For many of you, you may know that already, but for the couple of viewers that may not, we want to make sure we understand why we want to focus on the median sales price and not the average. If you had five homes that sold, say one sold at $200,000, one sold at $220,000, $230,000, $240,000, and finally one at $2 million, the median picks the middle home. So there was two that sold for less than it, two that sold above for that. So the median selling price is $230,000. However, an average selling price is $578,000 because that $2 million sale really skewed the rest of the market data. So we like to look at median because that gives us really a more true view of the state of the market. So looking at all of Volusia County first, we can see that our sales have actually jumped 23% year over year. We had 587 sales in January 2026 versus 477 in a year ago. Now, the percentage of cash sales is about 1/3 of all sales in Volusia County, approximately 1 out of every 3. That's, even though it shows about a 10% increase year over year, that's really been about the same for as long as I've been keeping track of stats. Now here we go with the median sales price, and you can see it's right at $346,990 versus $350 a year ago, down 1% approximately. So that's not dramatic either way. So if you hear people saying the sky's falling, I strongly disagree. There's a lot of pent-up buyer demand right now. Here's your average sales price for those people that like that. We do look at that. It's just I tend to focus more on the median. Now, our list price to sell price ratio for the month was at 94% versus 95.2% a year ago. So that means if you had, for ease of numbers, 100,000 listing, you're selling at about $94,000. Whereas a year ago, if you listed that, it was 95.2. That's a pretty strong market. It's not buyer or seller, but it's a good, strong market there. Now, the time it's taking to go from listing to selling is 91 days, about 3 months, similar to a year ago. The number of active listings has come up to 3,563 as of the time of this recording. So that's all the homes, single-family homes, again, within Volusia County, whereas a year ago it was 3,157. So that's up a little over 12% year over year. Month supply of inventory, and what that means is if the same pace of sales were to continue and no other homes came on the market, it would take 5.1 months for all of that supply to be extinguished. Last year was 4.7. So while that's up a little bit, it's still a balanced market on whole. Not necessarily favoring sellers or buyers, in my opinion. Now, this is for all of Volusia County. Now let's look at some cities. Port Orange, we had 63 sales last month versus 37 a year ago, so a nice healthy swing there of sales. The percentage of cash sales were 21% versus 10% a year ago. The median sales price in Port Orange is $330,000 versus $337,000 a year ago, down 2.1%. Nothing dramatic there. Your average sales price similar, down about 4.4%. Selling price to list price, selling price to list price ratio is 92.8% in January versus 93.5% a year ago. Not much of a change at all. It's taking about 89 days to sell a home in Port Orange as opposed to 96 a year ago. There's 315 homes for sale versus 214 a year ago. So that's a nice, healthy increase. So you buyers, please note, the number of homes available for sale has gone up dramatically. So there is inventory out there for you, and it is a good time to shop because there's not an excess of buyers in the market. So especially if you're a first-time buyer, you want to step in now. You're going to avoid multiple offers. Sellers are more likely to give you concessions at this point, maybe help you out with some closing costs. And we can talk about that. If you want to message me, be happy to speak with you about that. Our month supply of inventory, 5.3 versus 4.1 a year ago, up about 30%, but honestly not that much. We're still looking at about a balanced market in Port Orange. Now in New Smyrna, I'm just looking at the zip code 32168, which is the mainland. I want to caution everyone, these are small data sets, so the swings are going to look dramatic. Doesn't necessarily mean they're as dramatic as they may appear, because we only had 29 closed sales in New Smyrna Beach for the month. Let's get back there. Okay, 29 sales in January versus 38 a year ago, so that's down almost 25% year over year. Interesting to note, 41% of the sales in New Smyrna Beach are cash, whereas a year ago they were almost 50%. 1 out of every 2 homes were bought with cash in New Smyrna Beach. Median sales price at $485,000 versus $412,500 last year. Now that's up 17.6%. That's a healthy increase. Yet your average stayed about the same year over year. List price to sell price ratio, similar that we've been seeing, 92.6% versus 95.4% a year ago. Median days to sell, it's taking closer to 4 months to sell your home in New Smyrna versus 3 months last year. So that's up. Your active listings, there were 383 homes on the market at the time of this recording. There was 269 at the end of January last year. That's up 42.4%. Again, great for buyers. Month supply of inventory is sitting at 7.4% versus 4.8% a year ago. So what's interesting is the median sales price has come up dramatically this year, yet it's taking longer to sell. It's taking longer to sell, and there is more inventory on the market. So buyers, this is your time. Okay, now let's go to the beach side of New Smyrna Beach, and we are only looking here at single family homes. And again, we've got a small data set, only 17 sold, 10 last year. So yes, it's up 70%, but off such a small denominator. About 1 of every 3 homes there were sold for cash, where it was 40% last year. Your median sales price is up 27% from a year ago. And your average, again, this is why we don't look at average, because higher end numbers or extremely low numbers tend to skew averages versus median. Your list price to sell price ratio is at 92.3 versus 86.4 a year ago. So the market is strengthening there. Median days to sell, as you can see, it was 80 this year versus a year ago, 254 days, 9 months, 3 months. So that's a really good sign for sellers. Active listings, there was 156 homes on sale in the island of New Smyrna Beach, 32169 versus 116 last year. So that's a healthy increase there. Month supply of inventory, 10.8 versus 8 a year ago. This again indicates to me we're skewed towards the buyers, but notice that prices are definitely keeping their value. So now moving down to Edgewater, we had 39 homes that sold versus 23 a year ago, up 70%. 46% of homes in Edgewater sold for cash in January versus 30 a year ago. Now your median sales price is $295 versus $275. So that's gone up a healthy 7%. Your average is about actually no change from a year ago. List price to sell price, 95% versus 94.6 last year. Days time to sell is 78 versus 71. Active listings are at 167 versus 154 from a year ago, and month supply of inventory 4.7 versus 4.4. Edgewater's more of a seller's market, I would say, at this point in time. It's balanced, but if it had to lean, it's leaning towards sellers. Now in the city of Daytona Beach, for the month of January, they had 83 sales versus 54 a year ago, a nice healthy increase in the number of sales. 36% of those were in cash. The median sales price dropped 4%. That came in at $319,990. Your sell price to list price ratio stayed about the same from a year ago. Your median days to sell, 92 versus 82 a year ago, so we're still within that 3-month area. Your active listings went up about 7.7%, 477 versus 443. Your month supply of inventory decreased slightly, but right around 6 months. Again, looking at this, balanced market to me. That's what we're seeing in Daytona Beach. In Ormond Beach, there was 44 sales versus 23 last year, an incredible year-over-year increase in the number of sales. Cash sales, 40% versus 47 a year ago. Median sales price, $360 versus $419,990 a year ago, down 14.3%. That is quite a drop. Now, when you compare that to the average, again, what happens is your upper echelon sales pull the average up. But your average sales price looks like it remains steady. But your median, which to me is more in tune with the market, showed a dramatic fall. Your sell price to list price ratio, 93.1 versus 94.8 a year ago. Days on the market, 92 versus 140, so that's good. We've come down in days on market. Active listings up about 20%, 261 to 219. Month supply of inventory edged up a little bit. This is a 18% increase, but it's about a month. It's still within the 6-month supply of inventory. That to me tells me it's a balanced market. This to me tells me people have taken tremendous price cuts in order to get things sold. Your Deland market, we sold 40 homes versus 44 a year ago, down about 10%. Similar cash sales as the rest of the county. About 1 out of every 3 approximately is a cash sale. Your median sales price down 8% year over year, $344,490 versus $374,840. And your sell price to list price ratio, similar to what we've seen, 92.7 versus 96.5. Days on market, 97 versus 96 a year ago, similar to what we were seeing, about 3 months. Active listings, 233 versus 222, slight increase in the number of homes for sale. Month supply of inventory, approximately the same, 4.1 versus 3.9. So again, tight market, price cuts. Okay. Next is Deltona. We had 58 sales in Deltona versus 67 a year ago, so their sales are down year over year. Their cash sales are only 12% in Deltona versus about almost 20% a year ago. Your median sales price actually dropped again here, $289,500 versus $310 a year ago. Your list price to sell price, similar to what we've been seeing, 94.7 versus 96.9. Days on market, 86 to 90, or versus 90, similar. Active listings actually dropped between January of a year ago versus January just past, 367 to 449, down almost 20%. Month supply of inventory, very tight, 3.5 versus 4 a year ago. So Deltona, again, tight market, dropped price. So now we're going to look at beachside condos and townhomes. Everything up until now has been single-family homes. We're going to do a couple slides on condos and townhomes. In the 32118 zip code, we got 48 sales versus 38 a year ago, up very healthy percent. Look at that, 77% of those sold all cash versus 71 a year ago. So if you're looking at condos in this area and you are not going all cash, you want to think of that when you're making your offer. If you're going all cash, then you're part of the norm. Median sales price at 185 versus 230 a year ago. That's down almost 20%. Sell price to list price ratio 90% versus 88.8, 89 call it, a year ago. Not much change at all. Days on market 77 versus 164. So that's a very dramatic and positive, even though this is negative, that's a very positive sign for sellers. Active listings are actually down 8.5% from a year ago at 690 versus 754. And there's 15.9 months supply of inventory versus 16.8 a year ago. That's a huge number. Sellers, take note. If you're trying to sell your condo on the beach side, you need to be aware of this and you need to be sensitive to price. Now in New Smyrna Beach, we've got a little bit different story. We had 30 homes that sold. That's up 36% from a year ago. About half of those were cash sales versus 3/4 a year ago. Your median sales price, $630 this year versus $493 a year ago, up almost 30%. Sell price to list price ratio, 94.7 versus 93, about the same. Median days to the market, about the same, 82 to 80. And your active listings, there's 332 on the market as we speak versus 277 a year ago, a almost 20% increase. Month supply of inventory, 12.9 versus 10.7. Those are buyer-friendly numbers, but it's interesting with such a dramatic price increase that has occurred. So I know I went through that rather quick. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I know this can get exceptionally boring. So, hey, wake up if I put you to sleep. But yeah, I'm Michael George with the George Home Team, LPT Realty, along with Cindy and my wife and I. We've been doing this since 1995. I'd love to help you out. If you're thinking of either selling or buying a home in the next few months, say between now and September, it's probably the time we want to start talking and start planning out a strategy, especially if you're selling. We want to get your house ready to go and show you how you can get top dollar for that. In the same token, if you're a buyer, we want to get you prepped and ready to go so when you find that dream house, you can pounce on it right away and not be caught up in other details that should have been taken care of upstream. I'm Michael George. Thank you for watching. Tune in again next month. We'll have some more of this exciting information for you.